once you've hired an employee, what's your criteria for determining when to let them go if you're starting to feel that it might not work out?
Yeah, that's a tough one. The right answer is almost immediately, within that first 30 days. And that's probably the right way to do it. The challenge is it depends on what the issue is, because sometimes sometimes you can't actually fix it. There's been a couple scenarios where there were actually some gut feelings or maybe some feelings at the beginning that I don't know if this is going to play out properly. And had we taken the typical advice of let them go within the first 30 days, we would have missed out on some really great people that just needed a little bit more time to warm up. There's different personalities out there. There's the personality that can jump into something and immediately come up to speed and really impress you with their performance, and they learn things at kind of a surface level, and so they can be quick on their feet and they can solve problems and answer things, but they've really kind of learned things at a surface level. Then there's another personality type out there that, they're not really fully confident until they have a deep understanding, and they really know how to do the thing, and they really know how to they really understand it. And so they will be somewhat unimpressive at first, but in the long term, that personality sometimes can really win, because that personality develops the deep understanding. They really go deep with your business. They really go deep with your product. They just learn things at a different level, so they become so much more valuable as an individual, but they may be less impressive in the beginning. And so you have to really be aware of when you're feeling a little sense of maybe discouragement about that person that you brought onto the team. Okay, now what kind of personality am I dealing with here? Should I invest a little more, or are we seeing signs that are so significant that there's no way we can continue on? We need to go ahead and change directions now. So it's so easy to listen to a lot of the advice out there and say, if you get any bad feeling at all within X amount of days, cut your losses right now, be done. But I would argue that, yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, but there's also a flip side to that, and you need to consider the personality of that individual that you just brought onto your team. And you need to make sure that a couple things. One, you've given them a fair chance. Two, so many of us business owners are so incredibly busy, we never set our people up to be successful. We kind of throw everything at them and say, hey, good luck. And not every personality can really excel in that environment. So when you give them the tools, you really need to ask yourself, did you do everything it takes to make this person successful? Because if it falls on you, you might be letting somebody great go that just hasn't had enough opportunity yet to become great. And so you have to look at what you're doing, you have to look at their personality, and you have to consider some of these other factors. Did you put them in the right spot? You could bring somebody on. We brought on a guy that put him in customer service, and he told us he didn't really like to do customer service. Well, but he wanted the customer service job. And so we brought him in and put him in customer service, and what do you know? He wasn't so good at customer service, and we couldn't fix it because that wasn't his personality. He's no longer with us, but I'll bet had we been able to put him into a different area of the business, he probably would have excelled because he really did have ability. Had I moved him into more of a technical role, I bet he would have been better. So that was a little bit on us. He told us he didn't want to be in service, though he applied for a service job. We hired him anyway, and then it didn't work out. So what are you doing as the business owner to set these individuals up for success that you're hiring? Really, really look at it. There's a lot of factors to consider.
So let's go down that path a little bit further. What's been the key to really managing your employees effectively? I think you have 30 plus employees at this point. What's
Yeah.
been the key to really manage that many employees at your organization?
Yeah, and in the other business, we have a lot more than that. So it's learned a lot over time. I would, to be very honest, even though I've had a lot of people, it's really a very much a continuing learning experience for me. I just don't think that I fully got all the answers in this area, to the point that I've even been thinking about hiring a business coach that's very specific in this role. I think that, maybe pointing out a couple flaws about myself will give a little bit of insight. I think that it's easy for me to want to move the company forward so fast that, and I'm capable of doing so much, I know that sounds a little strange, but I'm capable of doing a lot of things inside the business myself. And so there's a real challenge on my part to spend the right amount of time teaching and mentoring my team versus me doing too many things too long that I'm capable of doing. I almost think sometimes if I was less capable, the business would move forward a little bit faster. And so maybe there's a bit of a lesson in that. Something else, I've also noticed that I do more training and teaching of our clients than I do of our team. That doesn't make any sense. I really subscribe to this concept that, everybody says put the customer first. I just don't buy that. I buy the concept of put your team first, because if you put your team first, then they'll take great care of your clients. And so I've now observed in myself that what am I doing here with our team? I am spending more effort training and mentoring our clients than I am my team. Now, and that's not to say we're not doing that with the team, but why am I not doing weekly training with the team, me personally? And so this is an area that's really changing inside the business. So, I find that the more time I spend with an individual, the more time the better they become. The other thing, too, is I'm very anti-big business. So I'm pointing out all these flaws that I'm noticing in myself. So I'm very anti-big business. And so I've really thought so much about creating bureaucracy and layers of management inside a company that every ounce of me fights that. And so now what I'm seeing as my businesses get bigger, that I'm fighting some of the structure. And I totally believe in processes and procedures, but I find myself fighting too much. I find myself fighting structure too much. And this plays out with the team. Because I want to create just a ridiculously flat organization, and because I feel negative about everything that I associate with big companies, slow moving, bureaucracy, just, dumb decision making, which is somewhat unfair because you get to be a giant company by doing some good things. So it's a little bit unfair, but everybody talks and books talk about how the big company is a dinosaur, but yet some of the things they're doing are really good with management, layers of management. So what's the point here? The point is that what I'm coming to conclude ever so slowly is that your team really does want structure. Your team really does want to know what you expect of them. And I'm not saying I don't do these things. I'm just saying I don't do these things at a high enough level. Your team really does want to know what's the most important thing they should be working on. Your team wants to know, am I doing what you want me to do? Your team wants to know all these things. They have all these questions. Whether they know how to verbalize them or not, they need structure. I'm a guy that can take nothing and create something and make it a success, and I can live in the world of chaos. But the individual that joined my team doesn't care to live in that world of chaos. And so I am, as the business owner, charged with creating some level of structure. And so the more that we create some level of structure without ridiculous bureaucracy and a lot of management or too much management, and the more we train and mentor the team, the more we communicate, which I have been not great at. I mean, frequent, constant communication. I'm starting to buy into, if you don't say it over and over and over and over again to the point that people think you're crazy, you're probably not saying it enough. Other people said that. I'm starting to buy into that. Those are elements, I believe, of successfully training, mentoring, growing the team so that they take ridiculously good care of your clients. And it cannot be understated how early in the process you have to start preparing the person that's going to take you to the next level. So if right now I'm doing, let's make up a number, let's say I'm doing $1 million a year now, and in 5 years I want to be at $15 million, that business is totally different. There is no similarity between $1 million business and a $15 million business. I better be working right now on the exact people that are going to break me through 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, and then 15 million. I better be building them now, because once I get into the couple $1 million range, it can't be me doing any of this stuff if I'm going to 5 or 10. So I have got to be thinking about, if in 2019 I want to be $20 million a year, exactly who am I building in my company right now that will have the skill to run a profit center of X size in my business, and exactly who am I going to have to go recruit and hire to fill a spot in 3 years to get me past the bottleneck. Long answer, but that plays hand in hand with the other stuff I talked about. You have got to have strategy here and be thinking about all the coming roadblocks. Most people that are doing less than $1 million have no concept of what it goes to breaking past the $5 million mark. They have no concept. It's a totally different business, totally different game, completely different, and they cannot appreciate it till they experience it. And I'm telling you that if you aren't thinking about it now, it will be a long time till you get to 5 million because you aren't putting the people in place and mentoring those people right now at when you're only $1 million, that they'll be prepared to be able to get you to 5 and past.
I think the key point there is always looking ahead, always looking a year, 5 years, 10 years out, and start building that business that you see in 10 years now.
It is. Everything as in our company has shifted to it. Now it's a project. We were not this way before, but now everything is a project. I mean, everything we do is now set up as, whether it's development or it's in a phone system or it's whatever. We've got all these initiatives going. Every single thing in our company is a project. Some of the projects have a stated value on paper. Some of it's in our head, but every project there's a valuation put to it, and it's put in an order, and we're working projects based on value. How much value will they contribute? And we manage everything like a project now. We didn't do that, and we shouldn't have done it that way in the beginning, but now we have to. And so then you have to make sure, so you're thinking about your projects this year, you're thinking about your projects for next year, and so on. Now, who are the people on your team that are going to have to do those projects? Which projects do you have that you don't even have people on your team that can do them? So either you need to start prepping somebody now to get them capable, or you need to start looking for outside vendors. This stuff, I mean, a lot of the stuff we're doing now is setting us up for 2015, and here we are at the beginning of April 2014. And we're thinking about 2015 right now, because if we don't work on this stuff now, we don't have the people now, 2015 will not be the year that we want it to be. And I really believe, and that's a total shift in mindset from an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs do not have to live in that world. And in fact, sometimes living in that world will slow them down too much, and because you have to react so fast. But now, as the business gets bigger, you have to be more strategic. And then I think that you have to be very strategic then about your team and your people. How are you bringing them up? Who are you putting in what spot so that you can execute on all of those projects?
That's great, Jonathan. Thank you for going so in depth on that. Now I'd like to go a little bit full circle. Let's talk about how you got started as an entrepreneur before there was a service autopilot, before you started down the technology path.
Yeah, so you know the story, but basically I think the couple of the greatest things that ever happened to me personally were, one, our dad is an artist. And so Dad had a studio in the house, so connected to by the garage. And so we never really saw Dad go to an office and work for somebody. So I have said this before, and I just really believe it. I just think, and I don't know, I think there's a lot of value in this, and that was that I never grew up thinking I had to go to an office and work for somebody else because I didn't have a father that did. So, Andrew, as you know, I mean, we just signed there. I mean, he was working. He wasn't screwing around. I mean, he was very focused and dedicated, and he followed a routine. It's not like, you know, we could go chat with him any moment we wanted to, per se, or that he was hanging out in the house all the time. It was still, and that was actually a good thing that we witnessed as well. He followed a very strict routine, even though he worked from the house. But we never, in my belief, we never felt that we just never assumed that this is the way it is in life. I have to go get a job for somebody. I think that contributed. So at a very young age, the second thing that happened to me was that I got interested in starting a lawn mowing business, and I started it with a business partner at a very young age, and our parents were just ridiculously kind in driving us around before we could drive, and they gave me the opportunity to actually make money. And that was the catalyst. I mean, as soon as you make $25 an hour when all your friends are making $4 an hour, it's ruined the rest of my life. I mean, how could I ever go do anything else? And then having had that experience of being able to make money and seeing how awesome that is, then you're like, well, I'd like to make a little more of this. And I'm in the software business, but unfortunately I never got a computer till I was 18. The reason I got a computer was because I had a lawn mowing business and I needed to keep up with my accounting. And so you just see how things kind of built up on themselves. And so I would say the two critical things that happened were, one, seeing Dad not work for somebody, and then two, having the experience of the business at a very young age, which piqued my interest and got me to read, got me to buy a computer, and from there it just took off. And there were so many other factors. Another one I would say, and boy, if you have kids, think about this one. Do not tell your kids they can't do it, and don't try to save them. So many parents, I know this is slightly off topic, but I think this is so critical, and we were very fortunate in this area. So many parents are trying to protect their kids from going through the same pain, frustration, challenge, and learning experience they went through, and that is the exact stuff that makes that person who they are. And this feeds right back into your team. I see this. I'm in my later 30s now, and I'm working with some guys, and I have done my time. I have read, I have studied, I have spent the money, I have made the financial mistakes, and I see other guys that are in their 20s. A lot of the guys on our team are young. These guys are in their 20s, and I want to shortcut their path. I can't shortcut their path. They have to go through this stuff. They have to read the books. They have to learn the stuff. They have to make the mistakes. If they don't, they'll never have the experience that I had. And so with your kids, with your team, you've got to let them go through the process. And so I would say that's the other thing is I didn't feel like the process was ever stopped for us. Nobody ever said, oh, starting a business is scary. You shouldn't do that. Oh, you'll probably not make it. Oh, nobody really makes it in business. We never had any of that crap. And so I'd say maybe that's the third thing that was a big catalyst for actually ending up where I'm at.
Yeah, and I definitely agree to that. And just to kind of add another perspective to the mix, our mother was a homemaker. She stayed home. Her job was taking care of me and Jonathan. The other thing that me and you have spoke about in regards to Dad is that he had a religious work ethic. I mean, he was up when we were getting up and going to elementary school at 7:30 in the morning. He would be out in his studio working, starting to paint. And when we got home from school, he was in the studio painting. He would come into the house for dinner. And then he'd return to the studio and paint until about 10 o'clock at night. So me and Jonathan have both absolutely gotten our obsessive work ethic from our father, certainly. And the other thing that I would add to that had an impact on us would be just our appreciation for hard work and not shying away from it. Because it takes a certain type of person to follow their passion, even when it means it's going to be working your ass off for very little pay. And me and Jonathan, me and you, did not realize this until we were probably, in our late 20s. We had no idea how, what a low income our father was generating and putting us through school and paying for a college education. We had no idea how little money he was actually making to live his dream, to paint, and support a family, a wife, and 2 kids. But he taught us the value of money, and he taught us the value of hard work. And it wasn't until much, much later in life that we realized that the reason we didn't have all the cool things that our wealthier friends had is because we were literally pretty broke as a family growing up, but we never felt poor. And it's that work ethic and it's that drive to accomplish your passion, whatever that is, whether it's technology or art or marketing, that is going to propel you. It's not going to be the financial rewards. And I think that's the big differentiating factor between somebody that's going to be achieving a fulfilling life and one that's just out there for the short term in a paycheck.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with every bit of that.